This painful moment will pass as soon as you see this message from the universe for you. The storm that brought you here. Something brought you here. Not chance, not an algorithm, not idle scrolling through a screen at the end of a long and heavy day. Something deeper than all of that placed this video in front of you at this exact moment of your life. And if you are honest with yourself, you already feel it. You feel it in the way your chest tightened when you read the title. You feel it in the way something inside you whispered, quietly but unmistakably, "This is for me." And it is. Whatever you are carrying right now, I want you to know that you do not have to minimize it for this message to reach you. You do not have to pretend you are fine. You do not have to perform recovery or peace or gratitude before you are ready. You are allowed to be exactly where you are, in the full weight of what this season has cost you, and still receive what the universe is trying to hand you. Because that is the nature of this kind of message. It does not require you to be healed before it can help you. It meets you in the wound. It sits with you in the confusion. And from that place, it begins to show you something you could not have seen from anywhere else. Because that is what this is. This is not a video that will ask you to rise above your pain before you have had the chance to understand it. This is a message that will sit inside the pain with you, and slowly, as you listen, show you what it means. Not what you wish it meant. Not a comfortable explanation that lets you off the hook from feeling. What it actually means, in the language the universe has always used to reach the human soul. The language of disruption. The language of precision. The language that arrives not when life is easy, but when the soul has reached a threshold it can no longer cross without help. You may be exhausted. You may have prayed for this to end 100 times by now, and still wake up to find it waiting. You may have asked in the darkest hours of your own mind why this is happening to you. Why now? Why this? Why, after everything you have already survived, there is still more to carry. And you may have reached the point where the question itself feels exhausting, where even the act of trying to make sense of the pain takes more energy than you have left to give. That question is not weakness. That question is the beginning of everything. Because the moment you stop demanding that the pain disappear and begin asking what it is trying to show you, something fundamental shifts. Not in your circumstances, not yet, but in you. In the way you are standing inside your own life. In the relationship you have with the experience you are inside of. In the very ground beneath your feet, which begins, almost imperceptibly, to feel less like quicksand and more like the beginning of a path. This video is a transmission. It arrived when it was supposed to. You opened it when you were ready, even if ready does not look the way you imagined it would. Even if ready looks like barely holding on. Even if ready looks like lying in the dark at 3 in the morning, not knowing what to do next and choosing in that moment of not knowing, to listen to something that felt like it might understand. That choice was not small. That choice was the soul doing what the soul does in its most honest moments, reaching toward the light it cannot yet see, because something deeper than reason tells it the light is there. Nothing, from this point forward, will look exactly the same as it did before you pressed play. Hold on to that. You are going to understand why, very soon. The universe speaks in disruptions. There is a belief so deeply woven into the human experience that most people never stop to question it. The belief that peace is the universe's natural language, and that chaos is its silence. That when life is calm, you are aligned, and that when it breaks apart, something has gone wrong. That belief, as understandable as it is, as human as it is the source of more suffering than the disruption itself. The universe does not speak in comfort alone. It speaks in contrast. It speaks in the things that shift without warning, in the losses that arrive before you were ready, in the doors that close with a finality you did not choose and did not see coming. Disruption is not the absence of divine intelligence. Disruption is one of its most concentrated expressions. And until you understand that, you will continue to spend your energy trying to end the very experience that is trying to give you something irreplaceable. Carl Jung spent decades mapping the territory between the outer world and the inner life of the human soul. What he found again and again was that meaningful events do not scatter randomly across the landscape of a human life. They cluster. They arrive in patterns. They appear at the precise crossroads where the inner world has reached a threshold, and the outer world responds with something that cannot be ignored. He called it synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence, the moment the external mirrors the internal with such precision that the rational mind has no comfortable explanation for it. And he observed something remarkable. These synchronicities do not occur when life is undisturbed. They occur in moments of rupture, in moments exactly like the one you are living now. The disruption is not random noise in the signal of your life. It is the signal itself. It is the universe turning up the volume because something essential needs to be heard, and the quieter messages were not breaking through the layers of habit, distraction, and comfortable numbness that protect us from the depths of our own lives. This disruption that you are inside of, this particular shape of pain, this specific way that things have fallen or are falling, it did not arrive in spite of the universe's awareness of you. It arrived because of it, because something in the invisible architecture of your own becoming had reached a point of readiness that comfort alone could never have delivered. Growth of a certain depth cannot happen in still water. The kind of transformation that changes not just what you do, but who you are at the level of the soul requires pressure. It requires heat. It requires the precise disruption that breaks the form you have been living in, so that the larger form you are becoming has room to emerge. Think of every significant turning point in your own history. The moments that changed the direction of your life. The decisions that led you toward something truer. How many of them arrived in seasons of peace? How many came in the wake of disruption, loss, or a collapse that you did not choose and could not control? The storm that broke things open is not the enemy of your peace. It is the beginning of a peace you could not have accessed from where you were standing before. The universe speaks in disruptions, because disruption is the only language loud enough to reach the parts of you that have been sleeping. And something in you, the deepest part, the part that led you here today, has been waiting to wake up for a long time. The invisible architecture of painful timing. If you have ever looked at the timing of your pain and thought, "Why now?" you are asking one of the most spiritually significant questions available to the human mind. Not because the answer is simple, but because the question itself reveals something crucial. Somewhere beneath the surface of your grief or your fear or your exhaustion, you sense that the timing is not arbitrary. You sense that this did not arrive by accident. And that sense, which the rational mind often dismisses as wishful thinking, is not wishful thinking at all. It is perception. It is the soul recognizing the shape of something it agreed to long before this life began. There is an invisible architecture to the way pain moves through a human life. It does not follow the calendar you keep. It does not respect the plans you made or the timeline you constructed for your own healing, your own success, your own becoming. It follows something older than all of that. Something that operates at the level of the soul, not the schedule. Something that understands with a precision you cannot manufacture through effort or intention alone. Exactly which season of your development this experience belongs to and what it is designed to unlock. The framework of soul contracts teaches that before we arrive in this human form, the soul makes agreements, not contracts of punishment, not arrangements designed to ensure suffering for its own sake, but agreements of growth, agreements with other souls, some of whom will love us and some of whom will wound us, and often the same souls will do both. Agreements with the circumstances that will press us into our fullest shape. Agreements with the precise moments of disruption that will force open the doors we would never have opened willingly on our own. The pain arriving now is not arriving because you failed. It is not arriving because you made the wrong choices or held the wrong beliefs or did not practice enough gratitude or ask for enough or surrender enough. It is arriving because something in the agreement of your becoming has reached its moment of activation. Because the version of you that exists on the other side of this passage cannot be reached by any road other than this one, and some part of you, the part that does not operate from fear or preference but from the deepest intelligence of your soul, knows this, even when the knowing feels impossibly far from the surface. Divine timing is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the human spiritual vocabulary. We speak of it when good things arrive, when the opportunity appears at just the right moment, when the right person walks in exactly when the previous chapter has closed, when something we had stopped hoping for suddenly materializes with a grace that takes our breath away. We say divine timing, and we feel the gift of it deeply. But divine timing is equally present in the arrivals of pain. The relationship that ended at exactly the moment it needed to, because staying would have required you to become smaller than you are. The situation that collapsed precisely when the foundation beneath it had become too narrow for the version of you that was pressing against its edges. The loss that, as unbearable as it is in this moment, freed you from a version of your life that was slowly, quietly costing you something you cannot name but can feel. Something essential, something that makes you fully yourself. You did not attract this pain because you are unworthy of peace. You were chosen for this passage because you are capable of the transformation it carries. And there is a profound difference between those two things, even when they feel identical from the inside of the storm. The storm does not know that difference, but the soul does. And somewhere, beneath all the noise of grief and confusion and exhausted questioning, your soul is quietly holding that knowledge for you, waiting for the moment you become still enough to receive it, the dichotomy that sets you free. In ancient Greece, the Stoic philosophers taught something that was radical in their time and remains radical in ours, that the root of all human suffering is the attempt to control what was never ours to control, that the emotional chaos we experience is not caused, at its deepest level, by what happens to us. It is caused by our insistence that what happens to us must bend to our will, by the gap between what is and what we have decided must be. That gap, and not the circumstances themselves, is where suffering lives. Epictetus, who was born into slavery and became one of the greatest philosophical minds of his era, articulated this principle with surgical precision. He called it the dichotomy of control. And it is this: some things are within our power. Our choices, our responses, our perceptions, our willingness to engage honestly with what life brings. Our capacity to direct our attention and our energy, these belong to us completely. And some things are not within our power: the actions of others, the timing of outcomes, the way situations unfold beyond the reach of our decisions, the movement of circumstances we set in motion but cannot steer to their conclusion. These do not belong to us, no matter how desperately we reach for them. When we confuse these two categories, we suffer. When we pour our life force into controlling what belongs to the category of the uncontrollable, we exhaust ourselves against a wall that will not move, no matter how long we press against it, no matter how righteous our cause or how genuine our need. The wall does not move, and we grow smaller in the pressing. This is not a passive teaching. It is not an instruction to stop caring or to stop acting or to retreat into a posture of resigned indifference. It is an invitation to something far more demanding than force, radically honest self-examination. To sit with the question, with real stillness and real courage. What am I holding right now that was never mine to hold? What situation, what person, what outcome am I spending my life force trying to bend into the shape I need it to take? What have I been gripping so tightly that the grip itself has become the source of more pain than the original wound? And then, with equal honesty, to ask, what would happen if I released my grip? Not the grip on your values, not the grip on your dignity or your direction or your willingness to show up fully for your own life, but the grip on how things must go, the grip on what others must choose, the grip on outcomes that exist in the future, which is a place your hands cannot reach no matter how tightly you hold in the present. The Stoics did not teach this principle as a philosophical exercise for those with the luxury of contemplation. They taught it as a living spiritual practice, a daily, sometimes hourly, returning to the recognition of what is yours and what belongs to the larger order of things. And every time you return to it with sincerity, something loosens in the chest. Something releases that you did not fully realize you had been clenching. Something that had been consuming enormous amounts of your energy in the effort of holding it together simply, finally, lets go. That release is not defeat. It is not passivity. It is not giving up on what matters to you. It is the first breath of genuine freedom you may have taken in a very long time. And from that freed place, from the ground that becomes steady the moment you stop fighting what you cannot change, everything that is actually meant for you becomes not just possible, but inevitable. When the soul chooses surrender over struggle. Surrender is one of the most misused words in the human spiritual vocabulary. It has been taught in countless traditions and countless well-meaning conversations as something that looks like collapse, like the moment the warrior drops the sword and accepts defeat, like the moment the person who has been fighting for their life, for their dreams, for the version of reality they believe is possible, simply stops. And so we resist it with everything we have, because defeat is not what we came here for, and collapse is not what we are willing to offer the altar of our own becoming. But genuine surrender, the kind the soul recognizes as sacred before the mind has had the chance to translate it into language, has nothing to do with defeat. It is not the absence of strength. It is one of the highest expressions of it. It is the strength required to stop fighting what cannot be fought and to begin, in that stillness, to listen for what can only be heard when the noise of resistance has finally quieted. When you surrender, you are not saying, "I give up on my life," or "I give up on what I love," or "I give up on the version of this situation that I know could be possible." You are saying something far more precise and far more powerful. You are saying, "I give back to the universe the weight of outcomes I was never designed to carry alone. I release my need for this to look exactly the way I decided it should look. I open my hands, which have been clenched for so long that I have forgotten what open feels like, and I receive what is actually meant to arrive." The law of attraction, in its deepest and most honest application, does not work through force. It does not respond to desperation. It does not accelerate in the presence of white-knuckled need. It works through frequency, and resistance, the grinding, exhausting, relentless insistence that things must change on your timeline and in your preferred form, creates a frequency that is fundamentally incompatible with what you are trying to call in. You cannot receive with a clenched fist. You cannot align with a new reality while your entire energetic body is braced against the current one, holding its breath and waiting for things to be different before it allows itself to relax. Surrender is the act of unclenching. It is the moment you stop swimming against the current and trust the river, not because the river is always gentle, not because the river always takes you where you thought you wanted to go, but because the river knows where it is going and you are part of it, and fighting the current has never, not once, led you somewhere better than where the river was already carrying you. It has only made the journey longer and more exhausting, and arrived at the same destination with you depleted rather than whole. There is a kind of pain that does not come from the wound itself. It comes from the refusal to let the wound be what it is, from the insistence on being further along in the healing than you actually are, from the story you tell yourself about what it means that this is still hurting, still present, still here after everything you have tried, and everything you have prayed, and everything you have done to make it stop. Surrender is the act of letting the wound be exactly the size and shape and depth that it is, without adding the weight of resistance on top of it. And in that allowing, something the mind cannot engineer and willpower cannot force begins to move. The soul knows this. The soul has always known this. It is the mind, trained by a world that celebrates force and persistence above all else, that forgets. You are allowed to remember now. You are allowed to lay it down. You are allowed to say to the universe, "I am here. I am tired. I trust you with the rest," and mean it completely, without performance, without conditions, without the quiet asterisk that says I will surrender unless things do not begin to change soon enough for my comfort. Mean it, and watch what begins to move. Signs hidden inside your suffering. The universe has never stopped communicating with you, not when things were good and life felt navigable, not during the seasons of joy and expansion when everything seemed to be moving in the right direction, and not now, inside the difficulty you are carrying, inside the weight that has made even the simplest days feel like a kind of survival. The language has shifted, the channel has changed, the transmission has grown more urgent, more insistent, more impossible to ignore. But it has been continuous. It has always been continuous, and it has been pointing at you, specifically and personally, all along. The question is not whether the signs are there. The question is whether you have been trained to receive them. Most people are taught from an early age to silence the signals of their inner life, to push past the recurring feeling that something is asking for attention, as if it were merely anxiety to be managed rather than intelligence to be heard, to dismiss the thought that returns again and again as obsessive rather than instructive, to explain away the number that keeps appearing on the clock, on license plates, in total amounts on receipts as coincidence, to rationalize the song that plays at exactly the moment its words were the ones you needed, the encounter that arrives too perfectly timed to fit inside the category of accident, the dream that carries a weight the waking mind cannot entirely shake. But these are not coincidences. They are correspondences. They are the universe speaking in the only language that can reach you in the place where you currently stand. They are the thin places in the membrane between the invisible and the visible, where what is trying to reach you finds a way through the noise of ordinary life and lands with the particular quality of something that was meant specifically for you. Angel numbers, those sequences of digits that appear at the moments you are most open, most raw, most in need of confirmation that you are not alone inside what you are carrying, are one of the universe's most direct forms of personal communication. When you see them in the middle of your hardest days, they are not decoration. They are not meaningless repetition. They are the universe saying, I see you. I am here. You are in the right passage even though every cell in your body is telling you that nothing about this could possibly be right. They are confirmation that the passage itself is intentional, guided, and known. But the signs hidden inside your suffering go deeper than numbers and songs and perfectly timed encounters. They live in the pattern of what keeps breaking, in the recurring theme that runs beneath your losses, beneath the relationships that did not hold, beneath the ambitions that collapsed before they reached completion. These repetitions are not evidence of your failure. They are curriculum. They are the universe circling the same territory again and again because something essential lives there that you have not yet been able to fully see, fully feel, or fully release. Every ache that returns is a compass. Every feeling you cannot seem to outrun, no matter how far you run from it, is marking the exact location of the place inside you where your next level of freedom lives. The discomfort is not the obstacle. The discomfort is the map. And the moment you stop trying to silence it and begin instead to listen to what it is pointing toward, you discover that the signs were never hidden. They were simply waiting for you to become still enough to read them. You are in that stillness now. The message has been there all along. You are finally ready to receive it. The law that governs every season of pain. There is a principle older than any philosophy, older than any religion, older than any system of thought that human civilization has produced or preserved. It was articulated most completely in the ancient Hermetic principle of rhythm, one of the 7 foundational laws recorded in the Hermetic tradition, passed through centuries in the text known as the Kabbalion. Everything flows, out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. Read that last phrase again. Rhythm compensates. What this law is saying, with the full authority of universal order behind it, is not a comforting platitude. It is a structural truth about the nature of reality itself. The depth of the low tide is the exact measure of the high tide that follows. The intensity of the descent is the precise calibration of the ascent. The universe does not create imbalance and leave it there. It does not swing the pendulum in one direction and then simply abandon the momentum. It creates cycles, and every cycle, without exception in the entire history of existence, contains its own reversal. This is not a cycle you are in danger of being the first to break. The law that governs seasons governs your soul. The law that turns tides turns this. The law of cause and effect, another of the foundational principles governing the movement of all things in the universe, confirms this from a different angle and with equal certainty. Nothing happens in isolation. Nothing arrives without origin. Every effect carries the signature of its cause, and nothing, including this pain, continues without the seed of its own ending already present within it. Every effect produces new causes. Every season plants the conditions of the next. And within the cause of this particular season of your life, the seeds of the next season have already been planted, whether or not you can see them from where you currently stand, whether or not the ground looks fertile enough from the vantage point of your current grief. What this means in the language of your actual daily experience is this: the exhaustion you feel right now is not permanent. The weight you are carrying right now is not the permanent weight of your life. The way things look right now is not the way things will look in the next chapter of your becoming. Not because of wishful thinking, not because of optimism, but because of law, because of the same principle that has governed every dark season that has ever existed in the history of every human soul that has ever walked this earth and found, on the other side, that the darkness did not have the final word. The night does not need to prove itself to you in order to end. The winter does not hold a meeting to decide whether spring has been earned. The tide does not consult with the shore before turning. These things happen because they are governed by laws that predate human doubt, human fear, and human despair by an incomprehensible measure of time. And those same laws, without exception, without favoritism, without the capacity to overlook even a single soul, govern what you are living now. You are in the low tide. You are in the night. You are in the winter, and the law that created this season is the same law that is already, even now in this very moment while the pain is still present, and the question of when still feels unbearable, generating its reversal. You are not waiting for the universe to notice you. It has never stopped noticing you. The turn is already in motion. You are closer to the shift than you think. Reason, as a sacred tool. There is a quiet war being waged in many spiritual spaces between the life of the mind and the life of the soul. In these spaces, reason is positioned as the obstacle. The intellect is cast as the gatekeeper that keeps the heart from its wisdom. Intuition is elevated as the only trustworthy guide, and analysis is treated with suspicion, as if thinking clearly about what is happening to you is somehow a betrayal of the deeper knowing that lives beneath thought. And while there is profound truth in the intelligence of feeling, in the wisdom of the body, in the guidance that arrives through sensation and impression rather than through logic and argument, there is also a danger in abandoning the mind entirely, particularly in the middle of pain, because the mind, when it is disciplined and clear and applied with intention, is not the enemy of the soul. It is one of the soul's most powerful and most underutilized instruments. Emotion, in the middle of crisis, does not always see clearly. This is not a flaw in the human design. It is a feature of it. Intense feeling narrows focus to the immediate, which is exactly what is needed for survival in moments of acute threat. The nervous system is doing precisely what it was designed to do. But survival thinking is not the same as navigational thinking. And at the level where you are operating right now, trying to understand what this pain means, where it is directing you, and what the most honest and courageous response to it would be, survival thinking alone will not take you where you need to go. It will keep you circling the immediate emergency without ever lifting your eyes to the horizon. Reason, applied with care and without coldness, holds the lamp steady in the dark. It asks, what is actually true here, as opposed to what fear is telling me is true? It asks, which of these thoughts are mine, and which have been borrowed from anxiety, from the opinions of others, from stories I inherited rather than examined? It asks, what has this pain consistently pointed toward, across the weeks or months or years it has been present, when I am honest enough to look at the pattern rather than only the latest episode? These are not questions that diminish feeling. They are questions that refine it. They separate the signal from the noise, the genuine spiritual intelligence of the emotional body, from the habitual catastrophizing that the untrained mind produces when it has been left alone in the dark with no guidance. Reason is not the absence of feeling. It is the container that makes feeling navigable. It is the structure that prevents genuine intuition from being indistinguishable from panic. The ancient Hermetic tradition, which gave the world some of the most enduring frameworks for understanding the relationship between the invisible and the visible, did not separate spiritual mastery from mental mastery. The Hermetic axiom of correspondence, as above so below, as within so without, is as much an instruction for the disciplined use of the mind as it is a metaphysical description of the cosmos. What you cultivate in the inner landscape of your thinking will manifest in the outer landscape of your experience, not as decoration, not as theory, as lived reality. A mind trained to look for meaning, for pattern, for the intelligence embedded within disruption, becomes one of the most spiritually powerful instruments available to a human being. You are allowed to think clearly about what is happening to you. You are allowed to bring your reason into the room with your pain and ask it to help you navigate without asking it to erase what you feel. You are allowed to be both deeply feeling and deeply discerning. These are not opposites. They are not in competition. They are the two hands of the same soul, reaching together for the same truth. The energetic signature of transformation. Beneath the level of thought, beneath the level of emotion, beneath even the level of the body as most people experience it in the course of an ordinary day, there is a field, a frequency, a living, responsive, energetic reality that is as real as bone and blood and breath, though invisible to the ordinary eye and unmeasurable by ordinary instruments. And that field is not static. It moves. It shifts. It responds to experience, to intention, to the quality of what you carry and what you release, to the thoughts you return to most consistently, and the stories you have been telling yourself about who you are and what your life means. During periods of intense transformation, this field does not remain still. It cannot. Transformation, by definition, is the movement from one energetic configuration to a higher one. It is the process of the soul expanding beyond the shape it has been inhabiting and pressing into a larger, truer, more complete form of itself. And that movement, while it is actively happening, feels nothing like the peace that arrives on the other side of it. It feels like disruption. It feels like inexplicable sensitivity, like being affected by things that used to pass over you without leaving a mark. It feels like exhaustion that sleep does not fully resolve and rest does not entirely repair. At its most acute, it feels like something is coming apart from the inside, and that feeling is accurate. Something is coming apart. The energetic structures that held the previous version of your life in place, the beliefs that no longer fit the soul you are becoming, the relationships that had reached their natural completion, the self-conception that was built for a smaller version of who you are, these are dissolving. Not because the universe is dismantling you out of carelessness, because you are being rebuilt. At a frequency you have not yet been able to fully inhabit, at a level of depth and authenticity and alignment that the previous configuration of your life simply could not hold. The principle of energetic alignment, drawn from the deeper understanding of the law of attraction as a law of resonance rather than a mechanism of acquisition, teaches that like frequencies attract like experiences, that the quality of what you consistently hold in your inner world, not just your thoughts but the emotional frequency beneath them, the baseline state of your being, is what the outer world mirrors back to you over time. And when that inner frequency is in the process of shifting, there is necessarily a period of instability, a threshold, a no man's land between what was and what is becoming, where the old has released and the new has not yet fully anchored into form. That threshold is uncomfortable in a way that is difficult to adequately describe to someone who has not lived it. But you know exactly what it feels like, because you are living it. The groundlessness, the moments of sudden clarity surrounded by hours of fog, the grief that does not have a single clean object because it is the grief of a self that is ending so that a truer self can begin. The way forward does not look like it used to look. The map you had is no longer accurate for the territory you are entering. This is not breakdown. This is the energetic signature of transformation. Your sensitivity right now is not weakness. It is heightened reception. Your restlessness is not pathology. It is the soul pressing against the edges of the form it has outgrown. You are not falling apart. You are being tuned. And the discomfort of that tuning is the price of the frequency you are becoming, which is worth every difficult moment of the becoming. What you are being redirected toward. There is something the universe does not waste, the precise shape of your particular suffering, every detail of what you have been through, the specific relationships that broke, the particular dreams that did not materialize on the schedule you had set for them, the exact texture of the fear or the grief or the disorientation you have been carrying, the peculiar way that this specific pain has made you feel specifically alone in the middle of a world full of people, none of it is random. None of it is filler. None of it is the universe being careless with a soul it has always known. Redirection is one of the universe's most misread signals. When something ends, the mind immediately catalogs it as loss. And it is loss. It would be dishonest and in fact unhelpful to call it otherwise. Grief is real. The absence of what was real. The space left by what mattered. The silence left by what was loud with life. These are not illusions to be thought away. They are the evidence of how deeply you loved, how fully you invested, how completely you were present to what you had. But loss and redirection are not opposites. They can exist in the same moment at the same address wearing the same face. The ending and the opening, the closing and the revealing. And the difference between them is not in what happened. It is in the time horizon from which you are reading what happened. From inside the moment of loss, all that is visible is the door that has closed. From the distance of even a few months, sometimes a few years, what begins to become visible is the corridor that was revealed by that closing. And at the end of that corridor, for those who were willing to walk it without turning back, without spending all of their energy trying to reopen the door that was meant to remain closed, there is something that could not have existed inside the room that was lost. The version of your life being prepared on the other side of this passage is not a consolation prize for the one you did not get to keep. It is not the universe offering you second best, because first best was unavailable. It is a truer version, a more accurate expression of who you actually are, of what your soul is actually here to do and to receive and to contribute. It holds relationships that can meet the soul you are in the process of uncovering, rather than the performance you had been maintaining. It holds work that resonates at the frequency you are being recalibrated toward, rather than the frequency you were inhabiting out of fear or habit or the path of least resistance. It holds a quality of peace that is not dependent on everything going right, because it was built in the fires of everything going wrong. That kind of peace is not fragile. That kind of peace does not shatter when the next difficulty arrives, because it was forged in difficulty, and it knows how to hold. You cannot see it yet from where you are standing, but you can feel the direction it is in. That quiet pull forward that exists even in the darkest hours. That persistent sense that something is on the other side of this, even when everything visible says otherwise. That is not false hope or wishful thinking. That is your soul navigating by a map that precedes this moment and extends well beyond it. Trust it, not instead of your grief, alongside it. The two can coexist, and in that coexistence, the walk forward becomes possible. The cosmic message encoded in this exact moment. This is the center of everything. This is the message beneath all the other messages. The truth that the entire architecture of this video has been building toward, and it deserves to be said without softening, without the careful qualification that would allow you to receive it from a safe distance, without the gentle framing that would let you appreciate it intellectually, without letting it land in the place where it is actually meant to land. This painful moment is not happening to you. It is happening for you, through you, and because of an intelligence that has known your name since before you had one. The universe, in all the ancient wisdom traditions that have attempted to describe its nature, has never been characterized as indifferent to the individual human soul. Not in the ancient Hermetic tradition, which describes an interconnected cosmos in which every part reflects and responds to every other, where nothing is isolated, where nothing exists outside the field of the whole. Not in the teachings of the law of attraction, which positions the human soul as a creative center in constant, active, reciprocal dialogue with the larger field of reality. Not in the framework of divine numerology, where even the repetition of numbers carries the fingerprint of a conscious intelligence reaching through the thin membrane between the invisible and the visible to make contact with a specific soul at a specific moment of need. The specific timing of this pain, the specific form it has taken, the specific way it has broken open the exact parts of you that most needed to be broken open, the pride, the need for control, the attachment to a version of your life that had quietly become too small, the belief that you had to manage everything alone. None of this is random. None of this is the universe being clumsy with something it created with intention and holds with care. This is precision. This is a message written in a language that bypasses the intellect entirely and lands directly in the place where your deepest knowing lives. What is the message? Not the general version, the specific one, the one that is for you, in this body, in this life, in this exact season of your becoming. It is this: you are being prepared, not punished, not overlooked, not left behind by a universe that forgot to include you in the design. Prepared for something that requires the version of you that is emerging from this passage, the version that has been broken open, the version that has learned the difference between what can be controlled and what must be released, the version that has discovered, in the middle of its own undoing, a quality of resilience it did not know it possessed. The pain is the preparation. The disruption is the curriculum. And the intensity of what you are feeling right now is not disproportionate to your situation. It is proportional to the significance of what you are being prepared for. The universe does not use a sledgehammer where a tap would do. The scale of this passage corresponds to the scale of what is on the other side of it. You were not chosen for this experience by accident. The soul carrying these words, the particular human life that arrived at this video at this particular moment in time, was always meant to receive this message. Not as comfort, though comfort may come. Not as explanation, though understanding may follow. As confirmation, as the recognition of something the soul already knew in its quietest, most honest moments. The universe knows your name. It has always known your name. And this moment, this painful, disorienting, exhausting, transformative moment, is not evidence that it forgot you. It is proof of how precisely it has been paying attention, choosing your perception as a spiritual act. There is a power you hold that no circumstance can revoke, no loss can remove it, no person can take it from you, regardless of what they have done or what they have failed to do. No collapse of plans or timelines or structures you had carefully built your stability upon can diminish it by a single degree. It exists independently of your circumstances, independently of what others choose, independently of whether life is cooperating with your deepest needs in this particular season. It is the power to choose how you meet what life brings. This is not a statement about positive thinking. It is not a soft invitation to reframe your way out of genuine pain before you have actually moved through it. It is not the kind of spiritual advice that asks you to perform gratitude while you are bleeding. It is something far more radical and far more demanding than any of that. It is the recognition, drawn from the deepest teachings of every wisdom tradition that has endured long enough to carry truth across centuries, that between every event and every response, there is a space, a gap, a sovereign territory that belongs entirely to you. And in that space lives the most consequential power available to a human soul. The law of attraction, understood at its deepest and most honest level, is not primarily a system for attracting desired outcomes. It is a law of resonance, what you consistently hold in your inner world, the frequency of your most persistent thoughts, the emotional tone beneath your habitual perceptions, the story you return to most naturally when life is hard. This is what the external world mirrors back to you over time. Not in every instance, not with mechanical immediacy, but with a fidelity that, once you begin to observe it with honest attention across the full arc of your experience, becomes impossible to deny. This means that the choice of how you perceive this painful moment is not a small choice made in a difficult hour. It is one of the most consequential choices available to you right now. Not because perception changes facts, the facts are what they are, but because perception determines what you are able to receive from the facts you are living. Whether you are able to see the message in the disruption, or only the disruption. Whether you are able to sense the invisible support present in the difficulty or only the difficulty. Whether you are able to trust the direction you are being moved in, even when the movement is painful and the destination is not yet visible. Viktor Frankl, writing from the innermost circle of human suffering in conditions that most people will never be required to endure, arrived at the same truth that every authentic wisdom tradition has reached from its own distinct angle. The last of the human freedoms is the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. The Stoics called it the governing faculty, the capacity of the rational soul to meet reality on its own terms without being defined by it. The Hermetic tradition called it the mind as the primary creative instrument through which the soul shapes its experience of the cosmos it inhabits. The law of attraction calls it vibrational alignment, the conscious choice of the frequency from which you engage with the field of possibility. They are all pointing at the same thing. You, in this moment, with the choice that is always yours, that has always been yours, and that cannot be taken from you by anything that has happened or anything that might still come. Choose to see this pain as something that is working for you, rather than against you. Not because it feels that way yet, not because the evidence is obvious, but because it is true in a way that runs deeper than feeling and outlasts the evidence available in any single moment. And the instant your perception aligns with that truth, even provisionally, even as a deliberate act of will in the absence of spontaneous conviction, the frequency of your inner world begins to shift. And what the universe is able to deliver into a shifting field, into a soul that is opening rather than bracing, is profoundly, permanently different from what it can deliver into one locked tight with resistance and closed against what it cannot yet understand. You are always going to make it through this. If you have stayed with this message until now, I want you to understand something about what that means. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still willing to receive what this video has been trying to give you, is not a small thing. It is not nothing. In the vocabulary of the soul, it is enormous. There was a version of this day where you did not press play, where the weight felt too heavy to add anything more to it, where the voice that says nothing will change and nothing will help spoke loudly enough that you scrolled past or clicked away, or told yourself you would watch it later, which is the mind's quiet way of saying never. But you did not do that. Something in you, something that operates beneath the level of whether you felt like doing it, chose to stay. And that choice, repeated across every moment of this painful season where you continued to move forward when stopping would have been easier, is the truest evidence of who you actually are. The soul that arrived at this video today is not the same soul that will leave it. Something has already shifted quietly, at a level the mind cannot immediately verify. The questions that moved through you while you listened, the moments of recognition that landed with a weight beyond what words alone can carry. The places where something in the video named an experience you had been carrying in silence, without language for it, and in the naming, made it slightly less impossible to hold. These are not small things. These are the first visible movements of a tide that is already turning in your favor, even if you cannot yet feel the full force of it. You are always going to make it through this, not because you are exceptional in a way that exempts you from difficulty, not because the universe plays favorites, not because your particular configuration of suffering deserves more resolution than someone else's, but because the same intelligence that designed this passage has been, from before the first moment of it, designing the way through. The universe does not build initiations without exits. It does not write passages without endings. It does not call a soul into the depths of transformation with the intention of leaving it there. Every descent, in every tradition, in every mythology that has ever attempted to map the geography of the human soul's journey, is followed by a return. Every winter contains spring. Every dark night of the soul is specifically and precisely followed by a dawn. The peace you are looking for is not waiting on the other side of different circumstances. It is not held hostage by a situation that must first resolve itself, by a person who must first change, by a timeline that must first deliver what you have been holding your breath for. It lives, and has always lived, in the soul's conscious choice to trust the design it cannot yet fully see. To say, not as performance, not as spiritual theater, but as the most honest and courageous act available to you in this moment. I do not understand all of this. I cannot see where it is going from where I am standing, but I am willing to trust what I cannot see. And in that willingness, I am choosing peace, not as a feeling that has arrived on its own, as an orientation I am stepping into with intention, with whatever faith I have available today, even if that faith is small, even if it flickers. The message has been delivered. It found you at the exact moment it was supposed to find you. The intelligence that placed this video in front of you today has known your name for longer than this life. It knows where you have been. It knows what this season has cost. It knows, with a precision you cannot yet fully access, what is waiting for you on the other side of it. And it is asking you, not to have all the answers, not to feel completely healed by the end of a video, not to perform a transformation you have not yet fully lived. It is asking only for your willingness. You have already given it. You gave it the moment you pressed play. You gave it every time you stayed when leaving would have been easier. And that willingness, small as it may feel from the inside, is the seed of everything that comes next. You were always going to make it through this. You already are. You